If you're reading this, you're probably sitting comfortably indoors. Maybe you're near a window with a view of trees. Maybe you think trees are beautiful, peaceful, harmless pillars of nature that provide shade and oxygen and aesthetic value to your property. Let me tell you something that will change how you see every forest for the rest of your life. Trees are not individuals, they are fingers. And sometimes the hand they're attached to wakes up. My name is Robert Kane. I was a forest ranger in the Black Hills National Forest of South Dakota for 11 years. Past tense. I quit 3 months ago after spending 1 week in Survey Station Delta, a remote cabin 23 miles from the nearest road. I'm going to tell you what happened during that week. You won't believe me. That's fine. But the next time you walk through a forest and notice the trees seem closer than they were a moment ago, remember this story and run. I arrived at Survey Station Delta on a Monday in September. The assignment was routine. 7 days of forest health monitoring, documenting beetle damage, checking for disease patterns, measuring growth rates in old-growth pine stands. Standard wilderness research work. The cabin was exactly what I expected. 1 room, wood stove, cot, solar panel for minimal electricity, radio for emergency contact, supplies for a week. I'd done this type of isolation survey dozens of times. The forest around the cabin was pristine, ponderosa pine, some over 200 years old, standing in natural spacing that seemed almost deliberate. The undergrowth was minimal. Walking between the trees felt like walking through a cathedral, pillars of bark reaching toward a canopy so dense that the forest floor existed in permanent twilight. Beautiful, peaceful, perfect. I spent the first day setting up equipment, establishing my survey grid, photographing initial conditions. By 4 p.m., I was 3 miles northwest of the cabin, working my way through a section of forest that hadn't been surveyed in over a decade. That's when I found the circle. A perfectly circular clearing, maybe 300 feet in diameter, and I mean perfect, geometrically precise, like someone had used a compass to mark it out. The trees on the perimeter were standing normally. The trees inside the circle were all down, fallen, but not from wind or disease. They'd been cut. Not with chainsaws, not with axes. The trunks were smooth where they'd separated from their stumps, like they'd been severed with surgical precision. And they were arranged in a pattern, all pointing inward toward the center of the circle, creating a spiral design that hurt to look at for more than a few seconds. I photographed everything, documented the coordinates, tried to make sense of what I was seeing. No footprints, no equipment marks, no sign of human activity at all. Just trees that had somehow been cut with impossible precision and arranged in a pattern that made my eyes water. My radio crackled. "Station Delta, this is base. Checking in. How's your first day?" "Interesting," I said. "I found something unusual. A clearing with downed trees in a geometric pattern. Looks old, but I can't determine how it was created." "Probably logging from the 1970s. That area has some historical clear-cutting." "This isn't clear-cutting. This is deliberate, artistic almost." A pause. "Well, document it and we'll review when you return. Otherwise, everything okay? Yeah, all good. Delta out. I hiked back to the cabin as the sun set, my mind trying to categorize what I'd seen into something rational. Maybe it was logging. Maybe the spiral pattern was just pareidolia, my brain finding meaning in randomness. But those cuts were too clean, too precise. I made dinner, wrote up my field notes, and went to sleep around 9 p.m. At 2:47 a.m., I woke to the sound of trees creaking. The sound was loud, not normal forest settling. Dozens of trees groaning simultaneously, their wood flexing under stress I couldn't identify. I grabbed my flashlight and went outside. The forest was still, no wind. The trees stood exactly as they had when I'd gone to sleep, but the sound continued, a slow, rhythmic creaking that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I swept my flashlight beam across the tree line. Nothing unusual, just pines standing in the darkness, their bark catching the light, their branches motionless. Then I noticed something odd about the spacing. The trees closest to the cabin seemed closer than I remembered, not dramatically, just subtly, like they'd shifted a few inches while I wasn't looking. I told myself I was being paranoid, went back inside, tried to sleep. The creaking continued until 4 a.m., then stopped abruptly. The next morning, I measured the distance from the cabin door to the nearest tree, 15 feet, 3 inches. I photographed it, marked the measurement in my notes. Then I hiked back to the circle to take more detailed photographs in daylight. It had changed. The fallen trees were in different positions, still forming a spiral, but tighter now, more compressed, like something had adjusted them overnight, refining the pattern. And there were marks in the dirt at the center of the circle, not footprints, grooves, long parallel grooves like massive roots had pushed up through the soil and then retracted, leaving impressions behind. I radioed base. This is Delta. The clearing I reported yesterday has changed. The downed trees have moved. Moved? Kane, trees don't move. I know how it sounds, but the pattern is different from yesterday, significantly different. Could be animals. Bears sometimes roll logs around. These are full-sized ponderosa pines. Some of them weigh over a ton, and they've been repositioned in a specific geometric pattern. Another pause. Robert, are you feeling okay? Sometimes isolation can... I'm fine. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing. Okay, document everything and we'll review, but I want you to check in twice daily from now on, morning and evening. Understood? Understood. I spent the rest of the day surveying other sections of the forest, trying to focus on the actual job I'd been sent to do, but I couldn't stop thinking about the circle, about the grooves in the dirt, about the way the trees near the cabin seemed closer. That evening, before the sun set, I measured the distance to the nearest tree again. 14 feet, 7 inches. 8 inches closer than this morning. I photographed it, documented it, told myself there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe I'd measured wrong the first time. Maybe the tree was on a slight incline and appeared closer from a different angle. But I knew what I was seeing. The trees were moving. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat at the cabin window with my flashlight, watching the tree line. At 11:34 p.m., I saw it happen. The nearest pine, the one I'd been measuring, shifted. Not dramatically, just a small adjustment. Its roots flexed beneath the soil, visible as ripples in the dirt, and the entire trunk moved forward by maybe 3 inches. then settled, became still again. I watched, barely breathing, as the tree next to it did the same thing, and the one next to that, a wave of movement spreading through the forest, each tree adjusting its position by a few inches, the collective effect creating a slow, patient advance toward the cabin. By dawn, they'd moved another 6 inches closer. The distance from cabin to nearest tree was now 13 feet 11 inches. I radioed base immediately. "This is Delta. I need extraction, now." "Kane, what's wrong?" "The trees are moving. They're surrounding the cabin. I've been documenting it and—" "Kane, slow down. Trees don't move. You need to calm down, and I am calm. I'm telling you what I'm observing. The forest around this cabin is actively changing position. Every tree has moved at least a foot closer since I arrived. I have measurements, photographs. This is really happening." Okay. I'm going to send someone out to check on you. They'll be there tomorrow afternoon. Can you hold out until then?" Tomorrow afternoon, 24 hours away. Yeah, I can hold out. Good. Stay inside the cabin. Don't go into the forest. Just wait for pickup. Understood? Understood. I spent the day inside, watching through the windows as the trees continued their glacial advance. By noon, they were 13 feet away. By 3 p.m., 12 feet 5 inches. By sunset, 11 feet 9 inches. They were maintaining a perfect circle around the cabin, not random movement, organized, coordinated, like a crowd of people slowly pressing inward, tightening the ring. And then I noticed the pattern. The trees weren't just moving closer, they were arranging themselves, adjusting their positions relative to each other, creating the same spiral design I'd seen in the clearing. The cabin was at the center, the trees were forming the pattern around it. The entire forest was one massive organism. The individual pines were just extensions of something larger, something underground, something that thought and planned and moved with terrifying patience. And it viewed the cabin as foreign, invasive, something that needed to be removed. At 8 p.m., the trees began tapping on the windows. The sound started as a gentle brush, branch tips touching glass, not aggressive, exploratory, like fingers testing the strength of a barrier. But the cabin windows were 12 feet off the ground, and the branches doing the tapping were coming from trees that stood 11 feet away. They were bending, reaching, extending themselves in ways that shouldn't be anatomically possible. I backed away from the windows and stood in the center of the cabin, my chainsaw in hand. I'd grabbed it from the equipment shed that afternoon, some instinct telling me I might need it. The tapping intensified, more branches, more windows. The sound became rhythmic, deliberate, like the forest was testing each window in sequence, looking for weakness. Then one of the branches pressed harder. The glass cracked. I fired up the chainsaw. The noise was deafening in the small cabin, the two-stroke engine screaming, the chains spinning at thousands of RPM, cutting nothing but producing sustained, aggressive sound. The tapping stopped immediately. I kept the chainsaw running for 30 seconds, then let it die. Silence. The forest had withdrawn. The branches were no longer touching the windows. I'd found their weakness. Sound. Mechanical noise. The trees responded to the vibration, recoiled from it, like it confused or disrupted whatever sensory mechanism they used to coordinate movement. I kept the chainsaw next to me all night, starting it up whenever the tapping resumed. Each time, the forest would retreat, pull back, give me space. But each time, the retreat was smaller, shorter, like the organism was learning, adapting, understanding that the sound was just noise, not an actual threat. By morning, the trees were 8 feet from the cabin walls. I could see their bark through the windows, could smell the pine resin, could hear the collective breathing of the forest, that slow creaking sound, now constant and rhythmic. My radio was dead. I'd tried to call base at dawn. Nothing. The solar panel had been covered overnight by branches that had grown across the roof, blocking the sunlight, draining the battery. I was trapped. No communication, no power, surrounded by a forest that was slowly, patiently crushing the cabin into its center. The extraction team was supposed to arrive this afternoon, but they'd have to drive the access road, and I hadn't checked the access road in 3 days. I looked out the window toward where the road should be visible through the trees. All I saw was forest, dense, seamless, like there had never been a road at all. I made my decision at noon. Stay and wait for rescue that might not come, or run and try to reach the road before the forest sealed it completely. I packed light, radio, GPS, knife, the chainsaw with 2 extra fuel cans, enough supplies for 2 days of hard hiking. Then I opened the cabin door. The trees were 5 feet away, forming a wall of bark and branches that moved slightly as I emerged, adjusting, orienting toward me like sunflowers tracking the sun. I started the chainsaw and walked forward. The trees recoiled, just slightly, just enough to let me through. I walked into the forest with the chainsaw held in front of me like a talisman, the noise cutting through the collective consciousness of the organism, forcing it to open a path. I moved fast. The GPS showed the access road was 2 miles south, 2 miles through forest that was actively trying to prevent my escape. The trees closed behind me as I walked. I could hear them moving, roots flexing, trunks shifting, creating a solid wall that cut off any retreat back to the cabin. That was fine. I wasn't going back. At the 1 mile mark, the chainsaw sputtered, running low on fuel. I stopped, set it down, and started refueling as quickly as possible. That's when the branches grabbed me. They came from above, long, flexible pine branches that had grown down from the canopy, extending themselves to impossible lengths. They wrapped around my arms, my chest, my neck. Not tight, not choking, just holding, preventing me from moving, preventing me from restarting the chainsaw. The forest went silent, except for that slow, rhythmic creaking, and I felt it then, not with my ears, in my mind, a presence, vast and patient and utterly alien, the collective consciousness of the organism focusing its attention on me. It didn't communicate in words, in concepts, in pure meaning downloaded directly into my brain. It wanted to break down the cabin, wanted to reclaim the space, wanted to return the clearing to forest, eliminate the foreign structure, restore the natural pattern. And it wanted to absorb me too. Not kill me, absorb. Make me part of the collective, add my consciousness to the network, let me exist as part of the organism instead of separate from it. It was offering integration, unity, an end to isolation and fear and the constant burden of being a discrete, separate entity. Just like the void offered Earl Dawson silence, just like the lighthouse offered the drowned service, just like all the ancient things offered exactly what desperate humans wanted most. I screamed and tore free. The branches released me, not because I was strong enough to break them, because the scream disrupted the connection, sound, vibration, breaking the concentration required to maintain the organism's control. I grabbed the chainsaw, fired it up with one pull, and ran. The last mile to the road was a nightmare, trees shifting position ahead of me, trying to block the path, roots rising up to trip me, branches reaching down to grab, the entire forest moving in coordination, trying to prevent my escape without crushing me outright. It wanted me alive, wanted me conscious, wanted to absorb me whole. I burst onto the access road at 3:47 p.m., covered in scratches, gasping, the chainsaw nearly out of fuel again. Behind me, the forest was closing, trees moving onto the road, filling in the gap, sealing the passage. I ran down the gravel road, not looking back, the sound of the organism's pursuit loud in my ears, creaking wood, shifting roots, the patient, inexorable advance of something that had all the time in the world. At 4 miles, I saw the extraction vehicle, a Park Service truck, driving toward me, dust rising behind it. I collapsed in the middle of the road. The driver jumped out. "Kane, what happened? You look like hell!" I turned around and pointed back towards Survey Station Delta. The road behind me was gone, just forest, dense, seamless, unbroken, like there had never been a road at all, like the cabin had never existed, like I'd somehow materialized out of solid woodland. "The trees," I gasped. "They moved! They're alive! They're all connected!" The driver looked at where I was pointing, looked at me, looked back at the forest. "Let's get you to medical," he said quietly. They found nothing. The extraction team went back 3 days later with GPS coordinates, satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar. They found the location where Survey Station Delta should have been. There was no cabin, no clearing, just old-growth ponderosa pine forest, dense and healthy, showing no signs of disturbance. The trees in that area were measured and mapped. Their positions matched historical surveys from 1987. They hadn't moved. My measurements, my photographs, my documentation, all dismissed as stress-induced hallucination, isolation psychosis. I was given a medical discharge, sent to counseling, prescribed medication I don't take, because I know what I experienced was real, and I have proof. 3 months after I escaped the forest, I started feeling pain in my arms. Sharp, stabbing sensations in places where the branches had grabbed me. The doctors found nothing. No injuries, no nerve damage, no physical cause. But the pain is real, and it's getting worse, spreading, branching out from the original contact points, creating patterns under my skin, patterns that look like roots. Like the organism's touch left something behind, some microscopic connection, some fragment of the collective consciousness still trying to integrate me. I don't go near forests anymore, don't even like being near houseplants, because sometimes, when I'm very still, I can feel it, the pull, the invitation, the organism reaching out across hundreds of miles, trying to establish contact, trying to complete what it started, trying to absorb me. The trees are not separate entities. They are extensions of something larger, something underground, something that has been growing and thinking and organizing itself for thousands of years. And sometimes it wakes up. Survey Station Delta is gone, absorbed, returned to the pattern. The forest sealed over it like skin healing around a splinter, eliminating the foreign object, restoring itself to wholeness. I was supposed to be absorbed too. I escaped. But I think part of me is still there, part of my consciousness still connected to the collective, because on quiet nights, when the wind is still and the world goes silent, I can hear it. The creaking, the breathing, the slow, patient movement of something vast turning its attention toward me. The forest is calling. And one day, I know I'll answer. Not because I want to, because the connection is already established, the integration already begun. I'm not fully separate anymore. I'm already halfway absorbed. The phantom pain in my arms tells me so. The patterns spreading under my skin tell me so. The dreams of standing in perfect darkness, surrounded by the breathing of trees, tell me so. If you're reading this, learn from my mistake. The trees are not individuals. They are fingers. And when the hand wakes up, you don't want to be standing in its palm.